Think being a medieval knight was all glory, honor, and fairy tale heroics. Think again. Behind the polished armor lay a world of bone-crushing combat, relentless hardship, and a life so brutal it would break most of us today. This wasn't a noble adventure, it was a daily fight for survival in a violent and unforgiving age. We all love the romantic image of the medieval knight, noble, fearless, a shining hero who slays dragons and wins the hearts of fair maidens. But peel back the layers of legend and the truth is far more unsettling. Yes, it's true that life expectancy at birth in the Middle Ages was shockingly low. But let's not be misled. Nobles who survived the deadly gauntlet of childhood disease often went on to see their 40s or even 50s, and some outlived generations of peasants. But here's the real question. Was that truly a life worth living? A life of endless war, crushing duty, suffocating armor, and the constant shadow of death, not on the battlefield, but from infections, political intrigue, and even their own code of honor. In this video, we're ripping apart the fairy tales to expose the raw, unromantic, and often miserable reality of being a knight in medieval Europe. A knight's journey didn't begin with gallant vows or heroic deeds. It began in childhood, in a relentless system designed to break a boy down and rebuild him as a weapon. At around age 7, the son of a noble family was torn from the comforts of home and sent to another lord's household to serve as a page. There, his education went far beyond polite table manners and the occasional reading lesson. His days were filled with menial tasks, cleaning, fetching, serving meals. But this wasn't just busy work, it was deliberate. Every chore, every humiliation, was part of an unyielding discipline meant to harden his spirit and strip away any softness. Pages were taught to endure pain without complaint, hunger without protest, and to see violence not as something tragic, but as a necessary, even noble, tool of their trade. By around age 14, the boy, if he had endured, was promoted to squire, literally a shield bearer. Now the real ordeal began. As a squire, he was the knight's right hand, tending to his master's massive war horses, repairing and polishing every inch of impossibly heavy armor, and serving on the battlefield. His own training was merciless. Hours of weapons drills with live steel, brutal sparring sessions, and conditioning under the crushing weight of chainmail and plate armor. Bruises and broken bones were common. Concussions were an occupational hazard. There were no safety nets. Every mistake had a price, sometimes in blood. By the time a squire was deemed ready for knighthood, usually around age 21, he was already scarred, physically and mentally. The knighting ceremony wasn't the beginning of his violent life, it was his graduation from over a decade of relentless forging and fire. You've been knighted at last. Time to bask in glory, win fair maidens, and ride off on thrilling quests, right? Not quite. For most knights, reality came crashing down fast. Far from being an endless string of heroic adventures, their lives were often monotonous, grueling, and in many ways, soul-crushing. For those in religious orders like the Knights Templar or the Hospitallers, daily existence was defined by rigid discipline. Their schedules were carved in stone, rising before dawn for prayers, hours of weapons drills and meals taken in oppressive silence. Joy was a luxury they couldn't afford. Obedience and endurance were their only comforts. And those romantic quests for honor and glory? They were rare. The truth is, many knights spent their days as glorified administrators, managing estates, collecting taxes, overseeing serfs, settling petty disputes, and anxiously monitoring crop yields. In essence, they were feudal middle managers with swords. Even the supposedly exciting parts of knighthood carried deadly risks. Early tournaments were far from the chivalrous jousts you see in movies. They were brutal, chaotic mock battles where knights charged each other in full armor, swinging real weapons with lethal force. Death and crippling injury were so common that several popes tried to ban the practice entirely, even going so far as to deny Christian burials to knights killed in these deadly games. Archaeological evidence paints a grim picture too. The skeletal remains of a knight discovered at Hereford Cathedral revealed a lifetime of horrific injuries from jousting. Countless broken bones, a shattered shoulder, and evidence of repeated blunt trauma. For these men, tournaments weren't mere sport. They were a bloody rehearsal for the horrors of war. If you're enjoying the way we're tearing down those old historical myths, why not give that like and subscribe button a good hard smash? It's the easiest way to let us know you're hungry for more deep dives into the raw, unpolished side of history. Go on, we'll wait. Done? All right, let's get back to the grim realities of medieval knighthood. That iconic image of a knight gleaming in polished plate armor may look glorious, but behind the shine was a price tag steep enough to make even the wealthiest noble wince. Being a knight wasn't just a calling, it was an astronomical financial commitment. A single custom-fitted suit of plate armor could cost a fortune, rivaling the price of a modest estate. Add to that the razor-sharp weapons, the costly maintenance of servants and squires, and, most crucial of all, the war horse. These beasts weren't mere animals, they were carefully bred, trained killing machines, the medieval equivalent of a luxury supercar. For a lesser noble, acquiring and maintaining one could mean teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. And here's the kicker, most knights weren't fabulously wealthy. Many clung to just enough land to support their family and meet their feudal obligations. The financial strain was so intense that some eligible nobles reportedly avoided knighthood altogether, not out of cowardice, but sheer economic necessity. But the burden didn't end with gold. Knights lived under immense social pressure. The code of chivalry demanded valor, loyalty, and unshakable courtesy, but only toward fellow nobles. For everyone else, the rules were far more flexible. Marriages? Forget romance. These were cold, calculated alliances, business transactions designed to consolidate power and land. A knight's entire existence was a high-stakes performance. One misstep, a show of fear on the battlefield, an insult at court, or financial collapse could erase a lifetime of hard-won prestige and plunge him into disgrace. In the brutal hierarchy of medieval society, there were no second chances. This is where the fairy tale shatters completely. Medieval combat wasn't a series of chivalrous duels fought with honor and clean swordplay. It was chaos incarnate, savage, filthy, and utterly terrifying. Picture the battlefield, a seething mass of men screaming in fear and rage, the air thick with the stench of sweat, blood, and churned mud. Forget the myth that a knight toppled in his armor was helpless like an overturned turtle. In reality, plate armor was brilliantly engineered, its weight carefully balanced so a trained knight could rise again. The true danger wasn't the fall, it was what came next. Swarms of foot soldiers descending, plunging daggers and spears through the tiny gaps in his armor, exploiting every weakness before he could recover. The injuries? Unspeakable. Excavations at battlefields like Towton reveal a gallery of horrors. Skulls cleaved clean in two by axes, limbs splintered like kindling under the crushing force of maces, and deep, ragged sword wounds slicing through flesh and bone alike. Analyses of Towton's remains show most men didn't die from a single blow, but from multiple frenzied strikes to the head, delivered with merciless precision. And knights, as high-value targets, often faced the worst. Their enemies wielded brutal tools like poleaxes, medieval can openers designed to punch through armor and pulverize the man inside. But not all wounds were visible. Knights were trained to kill without hesitation, to endure the screams of comrades dying horribly beside them, and to suppress the terror clawing at their own minds. Yet behind the stoic exterior, many were breaking. 14th century knight Geoffroy de Charny wrote candidly about the crushing anxieties and hardships of war, his words echoing what modern experts might recognize as symptoms of severe psychological trauma. These men bore the weight of violence, fear, and loss, without the language or means to heal. They were soldiers of a brutal age, scarred in ways that neither armor nor prayer could protect them from. So when we strip away the romance, what remains? A stark reality built on hardship and sacrifice. The path to knighthood wasn't a heroic quest. It was a dehumanizing gauntlet of pain, discipline, and relentless conditioning. Daily life rarely resembled the sweeping adventures of legend. More often, it was a monotonous grind of estate management and feudal obligations. Prestige came with a crushing price, financial ruin always looming, and a social code so rigid it could destroy a man's reputation with a single misstep. And when duty finally called them to war, the battlefield was no stage for honor. It was a nightmarish theater of mud, blood, and screams. The lucky survived with shattered bones and scarred minds. The unlucky never rose again. The knight in shining armor endures as one of history's most powerful myths. But inside that glittering shell was a man forged by violence, burdened by duty, and often haunted by trauma. For the medieval knight, a long life was never promised, and a peaceful one was almost unimaginable. If you're ready to uncover more hidden truths from history's darker corners, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and remember, history isn't just about what we want to believe. It's about what really happened.